Hi everyone, my name's Lauren and I'm going to share with you today about something I read when I was preparing for one of our youth discussion nights. For this particular discussion, we were talking about social media and particularly looking at how we can use it to glorify God and not let it create pride in our hearts. This was a lot to look at, a lot to plan, and also I just thought it was incredible that this was something our young people felt so passionately about. So I started doing some research. And there was an article I read in one of Premier's youth and children's work magazines, and in it was the following phrase: essentially, either you become an influencer or you become the influenced. Now, this discussion night was over 2 months ago, and I still keep coming back to this phrase. So I thought I would share with you all some of my thoughts on this and how we can apply it in our lives. The article is specifically talking about influencing for Jesus on social media. But in everyday life, we need to be aware that there are people who we are the influencers of and people that we are influenced by. So let's start by looking at who we are influenced by. This is often what we spend our time doing. Are we spending our time on social media, watching TV, reading a book? These things can all influence how we go about our day, what we say, and what our hearts are like. In Matthew 6, verse 22 to 23, Jesus says, "The eye is the lamp of the body. So if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light in you is darkness, if then the light in you is darkness, how great is the darkness?" Here we see that what we take into our bodies through our eyes can either be full of light or full of darkness. What we are being influenced by can either make us stronger in our faith and therefore full of light, or it can surround the light and start to snuff it out. And if you want to look at some more verses about this, check out Matthew 5, verse 29 to 30 and Mark 9, verse 29. We can also be influenced by our friends, our family, our colleagues, neighbours, those people that you spend a lot of time with. How often do we listen to someone saying, "Have you heard of this?" or "You should try this"? A recommendation from someone we know is often the easiest way that we are influenced. As with before, we need to be aware of these recommendations and make sure that they aren't damaging to our faith or to ourselves in general. In a similar way to the verse in Matthew I read earlier, Luke 8, verse 18 says, "Take care then how you hear, for to the one who has, more will be given, and from the one who has not, even what he thinks that he has will be taken away." Jesus is giving us a warning. Be aware of what or who you are listening to. The Apostle Paul is even more explicit in what he says in 1 Corinthians 15, verse 33. "Do not be deceived. Bad company ruins good morals." There really is no clearer message here than to be aware of who is around you and who you are being influenced by. Now, that's not to say to get rid of people in your life who influence you strongly, but think about who is influencing who more, and if that balance of influence is healthy. I would also draw your eyes to Colossians 4, verse 5. "Be wise in the way that you act toward outsiders. Make the most of every opportunity." With your non-Christian friends or family, it can be even more important to think about who is being influenced by who. I think it's also good to realise that what we are influenced by affects how we influence others. And that's the next part of the quote I want to look at. Who or what are we influencing? As with before, who we are influencing is often those around us, those we spend the most time with. That could be family, friends, colleagues at work. And when we're thinking about what to say today, I googled how to influence people. No clue what would come up. But what did come up was lots of articles on how to be influential as a leader, often in the workplace, which I guess outside of the 2020 lockdown is probably where most people would be spending the majority of their time. So each article I found contained several steps, mostly differing from article to article, on how to efficiently influence people. But despite all these different steps on how to influence well, they all came to a similar conclusion. Ultimately, influence is power, but you should never abuse that power or use it to manipulate people. The best leaders aren't the ones who bully or belittle you. They are the ones who listen to those they are trying to influence, who have built a trusting relationship with those around them. Now you may be thinking, that's great, but I'm not a leader in my job, in my family, or even my friendship group. But you don't need to be a leader to be influential, or at least not a leader in the traditional sense. We are all leading someone. In a church setting, we should be, and like it or not, we will be influencing those who are younger than us, both in age and spiritually. And ultimately, the example we should be setting for those people to be influenced by is the example of Christ. The Apostle Paul says in 1 Corinthians 11, verse 1, "Follow my example as I follow the example of Christ." We also see this in 1 Peter 2, verse 21. Therefore, if we are imitating Christ, the way that we influence others should be like a light in the dark. Both Luke 8:16 and Matthew 5, verse 14 to 16 talk of making sure that you don't hide away the light that shines from your life. Don't hide away your godly influence on people. Philippians 2, verse 15 says, "You are living with crooked and mean people all around you, among whom you shine like stars in the dark world." So if we are letting ourselves be influenced by Jesus and by godly people, then the influence that we give others should be like a guiding star in the night sky.